Welcome to the channel, everyone. Well, today we're going to try to get Dad's BluePrint 396 all together. I got this thing painted. I got the intake painted, water pump, so everything is I think hard enough to start assembly, so that's what I'm going to do. I've already done a few things. I've got the starter, the Proform starter kind of on there. I've got the spark plugs, the recommended spark plugs. I've gapped them to 35 thousandths, which is what BluePrint recommends. I've got the motor mounts that we're going to be using, although they'll probably have to come off once I put it on the run stand. But I've got them on there. That's the ones we're going to run. Those are Prothane poly motor mounts. The guys at BluePrint say we might get a vibration using that mount, but with 500 horse, we've got poly mounts all over the car, and I mean that's a really nice mount. I didn't want to replace that mount, which is like, I don't know what they are, 50 bucks each. I didn't want to replace that with a $7 rubber mount. It just didn't seem, I don't know, I just didn't like the idea of it. That is a way better mount than the rubber ones. The rubber ones, yeah, will they work? Yeah, but that's a way better mount that we got. So that's what we're going to stick with. I've got a chrome fuel pump plate there. It's just a generic one. It's not on yet. I just stuck it up there. These engines come with the timing, chrome timing covers and a timing tab on there. So yeah, we got to fill in the rest of it. K&N oil filter, I have filled that up with oil. It takes about a quart. Doesn't take a full quart, about a quart. So getting ready to actually put the balancer on first. I'll try to keep up with what I've got here. I'm going with the same balancer I used on my 400, the Power Force Pro Products balancer. So, okay guys, so I'm getting ready to put the balancer on. I've got a tool that will actually press the balancer onto the crank there, the end of the crank. You don't want to do this any other way. I've got it together. There's actually 3 pieces to this tool here, and like I said, I've got a tool set and it's got all different sizes for different engines, but you screw it in to the end of the crank. Then I'm going to take a little bit of engine oil. I'm going to coat the crank. I'm going to get a little bit on the seal here. I'm going to put a little bit on the inside of the balancer. I'm going to put a little bit of oil inside here where it goes on. There's a keyway. You want to make sure on your balancer that the seal area is clean from any scratches or nicks or anything, because there's a seal there and you could wreck your seal, cause leaks. I'll let you know, the first balancer I got had 2 scratches, like someone had a puller on it or something, so I had to get a different one. And I'm going to slide it in there very carefully. Get it in position. Then there is another piece of the tool. It's like a bearing. So that way you don't create so much friction. One thing you want to do when you got any kind of threaded tool is get a little bit of lubrication on those threads when you run your tool, otherwise you can wreck your tool. So okay, so it takes a fairly big wrench to turn that nut. So but anyway, you're just pressing it on here. This tool can also pull one off, pull the balancer off, so it should go on fairly smooth. I mean, there should be some resistance as it goes on because it's a pressed fit. You'll know when it hits home because you'll start turning the motor. And that's it. You got your balancer installed. Take out your tool. Okay, so once I get my balancer on, I like to install my water pump. I just use some RTV. This is actually Permatex Right stuff, but just I just use some of this on the block. You don't need a ton of this, guys. You can take your finger, even it out so you get a nice even coating. And then that'll hold your gaskets on. You can stick your gaskets on and that'll hold it. One other thing I got to mention is I actually had to dent this pan in, or this cover. I had to take a hammer and a punch, and I had to push this cover in to clear my water pump. So make sure that all this, I had to do both sides a little bit. Make sure that it fits before you start doing all this. Okay, so then you can take your water pump and install it. I like to put my bolts, my two top bolts in so I can get these started. I can get my bottom two bolts in. Make sure your gasket don't shift on you. want to torque them down and then check your water pump. Make sure it still turns nice and free. Okay, so balancer's on, water pump's on, torque down. I am using ARP stainless bolts throughout this. I've got water pump, I've got intake bolts, I've got fuel pump bolts. They're all ARP stainless. So I guess now I'm going to do the intake. And one thing you can do right now before you put the intake on is I'm going to dump a quart of oil in here just to get everything nice and oily. I'm going to prime the oil system before I fire this up, but I'm just going to dump a quart of oil in there. It'll get all over the lifters and it'll fall all over the cam and stuff. It's only a good idea, I think, to do that. But I made up these studs here that go into the Vortex bolt holes. They do have bolt holes for older style intake. I chose to use a Vortex style. Anyway, made these studs. They're just long bolts. I cut the heads off. It's going to help me. I got one here and I got one there. It'll just help me as I guide it down to keep me in the right position. I'm going to put a dab of RTV on each of these corners. Then I'm going to install these really nice gaskets that the guys at BluePrint recommended. I believe it's Felpro 98000. You can only get these, I think, in a kit. I've got it's like an intake gasket kit, and they come with different O-rings and stuff like that. But these are really, really nice gaskets. Like I said, I think you got to get the kit to get this gasket. Anyway, on the back side, they've got these little tabs that are really awesome. They go into holes in the head. They position themselves. So I mean, this is really, really slick. These gaskets fit the heads really well. I checked the intake. They fit the intake really well. So yeah, there's little tabs right here, these little holes. That's where them little tabs go into. So your gasket isn't gonna move on you. So yeah, really nice. Like I said, I gotta pull this off and put some RTV in the corners. Then I'm gonna run a bead of RTV all across here. And then all in the back there. And then I'll be dropping the intake down on that. Okay, so I'm all ready for my gasket. Got my beads in place. I love these little pins to help me line it up. That's a really neat idea, I think. So I gotta get my bolts in here and get this thing torqued down. Also, since I'm using stainless bolts going into an aluminum head, I'm gonna put a little anti-seize on these. I don't need to seal them up because the holes don't go through the heads. Okay, so now I'm gonna torque the intake manifold here, and got a lot of different numbers from a lot of different places, and I'm going to go with what the Edelbrock instructions that came with this intake. It says 11 foot-pounds is the maximum torque on this, and then I'm going to also go with the instructions that came with the gaskets. Now with these gaskets it says use no silicone sealant on the gaskets that they have. You do use the RTV on the ends, front and back, to seal that up. but otherwise you shouldn't need any sealant. Then you're going to go and you're going to torque the bolts down, and you're going to start with the inside ones. You start with that one, you crisscross over to this one, crisscross over to that one. So you do an X pattern on the 4 inside ones, then you can do the 2 outside ones. Now you want to do this in 3 steps. This is what the Velcro gasket states. 50 inch-pounds, 100 inch-pounds, then 132 inch-pounds, which is 11 foot-pounds. So I've got an inch-pound torque wrench, and I'm going to, I just did the 100 there. Now I'm going to do the 130, 132. And that should be good, guys. They always say after a few heat cycles you want to go through and kind of retorque some stuff. So after a couple heat cycles we'll go through a torque. Good thing about this Vortex manifold with the bolts that are straight up and down here, you can actually retorque them because there's nothing in the way. Like the bolt, like the intakes where the bolts go into the side way down in the thing. You can't really get to them with a torque wrench even with nothing in the way. These are really easy, so we'll be able to retorque them. So the intake is ready to go. Cleaned up my RTV real nice, so it's nice looking. I dropped my distributor on there to make sure it was gonna drop on and work, and it does. So yeah, it's coming together real nice, looking really good. So I guess we'll move on to the fuel pump, I guess. Okay guys, so it's fuel pump time, and I've got the fuel pump push rod that BluePrint recommended. It's a GM one. I'll try to link all the stuff, guys, that I used. The engine don't come with a fuel pump push rod, so you've got to get your own. I like to put a little assembly lube on this. So it don't start out dry. Just lube it up real good. The lube also helps keep it in place. Then you got your, gotta put my gasket and my fuel pump plate on. I'm going to use a little RTV on the engine side. Put your gasket on. Put your plate on. Got my fuel pump gasket. It's gonna go on here. I think I'm just gonna put some RTV on the gasket here. That'll help hold that in place. Make sure your fuel pump push rod is back. You can put a little assembly lube on your push rod so it don't start out dry. It's installed. Should be good to go. Okay, so I'm actually having to clean out all these all these holes that I got to put bolts in because I painted it, and for some stupid reason, I don't know why I didn't put, I could have easily put bolts in these holes. You know, junk bolts in those holes to keep the paint out of them. I don't know why I didn't figure out which ones I needed to use. I wish I would have done that, then I wouldn't have had to gone through and I've had to clean out every single hole. You wouldn't think there's a lot of them, but it adds up. So I'm just using a tap. I wish I had a thread cleaning set. It's what I should have, but I'm just using our Craftsman's tap and die set we have, and it works. But like I said, I wish I had a thread chasing set. Got a few more holes I got to do here, and I think I'll be done with the thread cleaning. Okay, so got a bunch of little things added to the motor. I got the crank pulley on. I've got a new ARP balancer bolt. When you get them, they have instructions, follow them. You got to use their assembly lube in places, so they do a good job. They tell you what to do. Got my carburetor kind of sitting on there. It's not down, but wanted to see how my line fit there. It's kind of too long, the line is really, because I added the filter there. Normally it wouldn't be so long, but I just took it over here and just tied it, and it'll be all right. Got my water neck just sitting on there. This is the O-ring type, but it looks like an older one, so I really like that. Got some of my heater hose, or I actually got both my heater hose pipe in there. This I would plug that off, but I think I might have to run the temperature sensor to that, the factory one, so the factory gauges work. Because of the heads, these BluePrint heads don't have a 1/2 inch pipe. It's a 3/8 pipe, I believe. That's all they have on these heads, which the factory ones came with a 1/2 inch. So if you get a factory type gauge, it's not going to go in there. So this is a 1/2 inch pipe. So that's pretty much the only place it can go. So we'll have to decide if we want the factory temperature gauge to work or not. We're going to put in a Stewart Warner temperature gauge just to make sure everything is staying cool, but I don't know, we'll decide that, I guess. Yeah, I've got the booster vacuum right here, and there's another vacuum here. I'll just probably use that to monitor the vacuum. I'll plug it off. But normally, like if you have a automatic transmission, you'd use that for your transmission. Got to put the distributor in, but what I want to do is I want to spin this thing around, bring it up to top dead center, and get the distributor set in place about where it's going to be. So I took all the spark plugs out. Now I'm going to turn the motor over using the crank bolt. I can't torque that crank bolt because you won't get to the torque before your motor starts spinning over. So you gotta have the flywheel or something on there to hold it while you torque that. So I'll do that once I put it on the engine run stand. But yeah, right now I'm gonna roll this thing over, find top dead center so I can drop my distributor in. Okay, so I'm looking for top dead center on the motor here. I got all the spark plugs out, like I said, just to make it so it's easier to turn this thing over. Now, the best way to find top dead center is to stick your finger over the number 1. Stick your finger over the hole, and when the air really starts to blow out, then you know you're on your compression stroke. And then you can line up your balancer on your 0, and that should be top dead center. But if you want to, so you can hear there's no air coming out of that. And you can feel, I can feel the air. I can actually feel I'm creating pressure. So that should be top dead center now. My marks are lined up. Now I can drop my distributor in. Okay, so I got my distributor. You can see I've got it in there. I got my cap on. This is number 1 right here. So if you took this cap off, the rotor is going to be facing this one, number 1. So yeah, got my coil on there, got my coil bracket. These, I need to put the headers on there, and I need to test out the wires. I think they're going to be, see how the header is going to be right here. So I'm thinking this might be too short, so I might have to loosen up all my holders and give myself a little more length. I got enough, I think I got enough spark plug wire, because I made all these, I custom made these. I think I got enough to get me some slack, because I feel like the distance between these spark plugs and the top of these valve covers is greater on this motor than it was the original one that he had. But I think I was worried it wasn't going to work when I seen that, but I think I got enough slack in these wires that I think I can get it. So I'll only know that. I got to get the headers on to figure that out. But yeah, it's coming together, guys. One other thing I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna have to drill this hole out, because this is a threaded hole, and his power steering, there's a nut on the bracket back here, and the bolt's got to go through that. So I got to drill that out. Got to get my water pump pulley on there. Alternator bracket, that's going to be another problem. So you can see on the original motor, the bracket goes to the water neck bolt. Well, that works fine for that one, but I believe the dimensions are not the same. You know, this intake is higher than the factory intake. I'm going to set it up there. I don't think it's going to work out, but what I'm probably going to have to do is I'm going to cut this off. I'll cut this bracket off, and I'll use the there's a hole on the intake right about the same spot, this right here. So I'm going to cut this off. I'll make something to go to that hole, weld it on there, make it look factory. We want to run all this factory stuff. I want to run this factory bracket. I want to run the factory belts and factory power steering and everything, pulleys, to give it that factory look. That's the whole reason this thing is all orange and you don't see any aluminum, is because we're trying to get that old look to the motor. So yeah, I'm going to get a few more things on here, and yeah, I'll bring you back when I get something else done. Okay, so here's the modified mount that I just made here. Basically, I took the mount that went to here, I cut that off, actually put it right here. I worked it, bent it, welded it on here, and now pretty much looks factory as soon as I get it painted. I don't think anybody's gonna even know that that's not the way it was supposed to go. So yeah, happy with how that turned out. Yeah, so now what I think I'm gonna do is, I've only got like a few things left here. I've got to get new gaskets for the valve covers on, and I got to test fit my headers, get my wires figured out, and just pretty much it. Besides the sensor here, I haven't decided what I'm doing with that yet. And then I got to go through, you know, snug some stuff down that I don't have tightened all the way. And this thing's ready for the engine stand. So yeah, I guess I think I'm going to get the new gaskets on the valve covers, and then I'll show you the headers that are going to go on this thing. Okay, so I'm working on this side. I will show you the inside. I don't know if I showed you this or not, but this 396 actually has BluePrint's roller rockers. If you remember, my BluePrint 400 has Cop Cam's roller rockers. So anyway, another thing you guys might remember is on my 400 I was having a oil leaking around the studs. Now the reason for that is I guess these BluePrint heads are drilled and tapped for using the older style for outside bolts to hold the valve covers on, and you can see they're drilled and tapped for center bolt, the newer style valve covers. So they've got these grooves, I guess, for the center bolt valve covers right here. You can see there's like a groove, and these have to be filled with silicone or you're going to get an oil leak out of the stud there. So I'm going to take some RTV and I'm going to put it in here, and then I'm using these studs, these stainless studs. These are 1/4 inch, 1.5 inch studs, and I'm going to put the RTV in there, then I'm going to screw my stud on, and then put my gasket on there, and then stick my valve cover on. I think that's going to be the easiest way to do it. I've got bolts in mine, regular bolts with an Allen headed bolt. So I'm going to try this on this one, see if this is a little better. We'll see, I guess. I've got just a standard cork gasket. I tried some more expensive rubber gaskets on the old 350, and I just could not get them valve covers to stop leaking, so I'm going back to the cork. So yeah, I'm going to get the RTV on that and get the cover back on. Okay, so I went and put the headers on there. They're not installed, they're just sitting up there with a couple bolts. Got some good news, got some bad news. Good news is I got my plug wires to all work. I had enough length to get them to work, to route them the way I want. This side is okay. So it looks good, everything clears. This side, have a few issues on this side. This one here is real close, but it's actually not touching. It's not touching the header. This one right here, unfortunately, is touching the header there. And I can't get this on. I had to loosen up the header and pull it out a little bit to be able to get this spark plug on, or the wire on the plug. So that's not good. One thing about these ceramic coated headers is they don't put off near the heat like a regular steel header or something like that. They really don't get near as hot. I noticed that when I run my big block, the 427 with just steel headers. Those things got hot. I mean, you don't want to touch these because they get hot, but they don't get near as hot as a regular header. I still don't want them touching, but it is touching. I'm hoping maybe, I don't have no gaskets on this. I'm hoping when I get a gasket that it'll give me just a little bit of daylight between that plug. And I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's actually touching the block over here. And again, hopefully when I get my gasket on there, it's not going to do that. I have no idea why that's so close to the block. I mean, these are headers. I mean, this is a small block Chevy. I mean, no way. I mean, I know it's tight in some of these cars, but there's no way you should be that close to the block. I don't understand that. These are Hedman headers. And you can see they're not long tube. We went with these shorty or mid-length headers, I guess they call them, because we were dragging on the ground with the full length, the long tube. And you just can't do that, guys. You can't run around dragging the car on the ground. It's no fun driving around if you're going to be scared to scrape the ground all the time. These are the long tube headers we had on his car. Hopefully they're going to fit in my truck because the truck's lifted. But I mean, it was close on a few of these. This one here is close, but it's not near as close. Of course, these spark plug wires are not near as thick as those MSD ones. I might have to get a set of these maybe, see if I can get them to work on there, if the gasket doesn't help. But yeah, that's hot rodding, guys. I mean, you got to modify parts here, modify parts there to fit here. Oh, another part that is not going to work. The power steering bracket right here. This thing, I just stuck it up there to test fit it, hoping that it would work. It bolts right to here. Actually, I made this mount. It did go to the exhaust manifold on the car. But since we changed the headers, there's nothing there for it to bolt to. And I didn't want to make like a big spacer thing. I wanted it nice and clean. So I went to here, but this BluePrint block has this block of casting right here. And this, I don't know why they have it there, but they have it there. And it's in the way. So probably gonna have to modify that bracket to get it to work. I don't need it for the engine run stand, but yeah, this motor is actually ready for the run stand. It's got gaskets for the headers, tighten a few bolts, and it'll be ready for the engine run stand. So actually had to order another engine stand because I got all the engine stands. I got engines everywhere, guys. I got all our engine stands full of engines, and I can't swap mine over. I got nowhere to put it while I do the swap over. So yeah, that's my BluePrint 400. It's been running on the engine stand, running good. I've been trying to get the oil to stop leaking on the valve covers. So that's really the only issue I've had with it is I changed the valve covers to these aluminum ones and trying to get them to stop leaking. But anyway, guys, that's where I'm at with this thing, and I think I'm going to end the video because I don't really have anything else to do to this, like I said, except for tighten a few bolts and get it on the engine run stand. So I think we're going to call it good for this video. It's probably going to be a long video. Hopefully you stuck around. But yeah, I guess I'll see you guys.